So here's a very interesting roof with a unique layout with some scuppers and things like that in it on a residential home mixed with shingles, something you don't see every day. This person had their roof done and has some questions, and we're going to go ahead and critique the job from what we can see, both good and bad, in the photographs. Let's dive into this. Titled, Rip My New Roof. Roof replaced last week, and I think it looks good, but had a few questions. Chimney flashing. Could be better, right? Other flashings look good? How do the ridge vents look? These points where the roof hits the eaves and the shingles curl up a bit, kind of Mickey Mouse. And it wasn't like that before, but is it a problem? And finally, he removes some rotten fascia, and I need tips on how to complete the repair. Caulk, spackle, then paint? And what he did to the fascia on the other side made the metal cover on the French gutter all wacky. How to address? Well, we got a lot of photographs. Let's start taking a look at things, and let's see what we can dig into. Photo number one, this is what he called the Mickey Mouse area. And when you see what's on top, this actually wraps into like a scupper for the roof to drain into. And yeah, this is a little wonky. I mean, it's pretty clear. You can see where the metal went to before, just from the paint outline. This could have been done a lot better and a lot smoother. I don't know what they were thinking. Here's the other end of that same area. And, I'm curious. This is a lot of exposed wood, and I don't know why or what caused that, but it was that way before. Okay, so here's one of the first pictures of this. Now, yeah, I don't know why they lifted it that way. In my mind, it could have been cut and form fit in there quite a bit better. I mean, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have dirt and leaves and crap build up inside that. So you're going to want to make plans to clean that out on a consistent basis. But will it necessarily cause a leak? No. But yes, it could have been a lot better. Here it is from another angle. And just, it's really weird. I think that could have been done a lot better. This isn't quite so bad. I mean, myself personally, I would have trimmed that piece that's sticking down so it looked a little more smooth. There you go again. Now, that corner of that metal, that's a lot of caulking in there. I really think that metal could have been cut a lot smoother. Just me. Here's what I mean. When we get close up, that, maybe it's not framed that well and the structure underneath doesn't line up, and that's why you have such a mess there. But yeah, I don't like this corner. Okay, here's the fascia joint he's talking about. Now from here, it looks like a gaping hole, but when we zoom in, really, it looks more like that's just paint marks on there, or pen marks, I should say. And it looks like a clean joint. I mean, you've got some funkiness going on right here. To be very frank with you, I don't do this stuff. I mean, if it was my house, I guess I'd probably try to smooth it out and wood filler that and then prime it and paint it. Somebody in the comments will know a lot more about this than I do. And hopefully they'll give you some guidance. But looking over here, overall, I mean, it looks like a nice, clean installation. I like the way they cut the vent in. I especially like how they used screws with a rubber washer on there to secure them to the deck. Now, myself personally, I don't always put them out that far to the corner because, I bring them in. It's a personal thing. Just like to keep them a little bit farther in from the edge where water can kind of migrate over. But if they sealed underneath, it's no big deal. And frankly, I've never seen them leak. I just have an overactive imagination. And again, we can see right here the steps. Boom, boom, boom. Over the fingers out of it. But anyways, the step pattern looks good. They look like they have adequate steps. Nothing to complain about there. There's a ridge vent from right here. It looks good to me. This flashing looks nice. I like the cut around it. No complaints on that one. But this one Okay. Get out of the picture here. In my opinion, this shingle down here should have still been underneath. If you sealed it, if they put some plastic cement or flashing cement in between there, you're fine. I always believe that really the shingle, you don't start going back over top of the flashing until the top edge of a shingle gets to the top of the hole for what you're and then you put the flashing on and start going back over top of it. So personally, I would not have had this shingle. It would have been under. But that's just me. Here we are at the chimney. You know what? This is not the best chimney flashing I've ever seen, and it's not the worst. It looks pretty serviceable. Again, I like that they actually didn't just throw nails in there. They put screws and rubber washers in there. I really like that. I don't necessarily care for this exposed metal right here, but it's not going to leak. And that's not a screw or a nail on the end of it there, and it's just some discoloration on the flashing, so we don't have an exposed nail there. It caught my eye too for a second, but I looked. There's nothing to worry about there. Again, it's not the very best I've ever seen. It's not the worst. It looks very serviceable, and in fact, compared to some of the stuff we typically see, this is actually pretty nice. Here's the top side. So yeah, like that. Moving on to this pipe flash. Now this one they cut beautifully. That's textbook. I mean, that almost shouldn't even be a picture from your roof. That looks like somebody's propaganda picture they would put on their roofing company's website. But beautiful. Now in the comments, I noticed people talking about these washer screws in the ridge caps. No. I mean, they'll work. And but thinking that rubber is going to seal on those granules, no, that's not going to seal. But the potential amount of water that would leak in is so negligible. But that's unnecessary. I would have just used nails and caulked them like we typically do, or at least caulked these. Yeah, it's not a problem, but it's not going to have the desired effect that they think it's going to have, but it's not really a problem. Yeah, there's our nice washers again on your chimney. Love it. There they again on the ridge. You know what? It's not the end of the world. I don't think it's really going to leak. I mean, if the granules, chip away under there and because they do, then that screw could loosen, but that's going to be way down the road. And again, I don't think it's the end of the world. Personally, I would have just used a nail. I don't think this is going to have the effect that they thought it was going to have. Again, that's just me. It's top of the valley. They carried the ridge cap all the way up, so that makes sense. Yeah, they did the screws there again. Again, it's not the end of the world, but thinking that the rubber washer on those is going to provide some kind of extra seal, I think is a fallacy. That's myself. At the end of the day, this is really goofy. Don't like that. That could have been done better. But it's easy to say that when I'm not actually on the roof and looking at what they were looking at, but I don't know what I can't fathom in my mind where I would ever do something like that. All that being said, from what I can see, I think it's a nice looking roof job. A couple things that I personally wouldn't do, but that are really, at the end of the day, probably not a problem ever. And my concern would be in the Mickey Mouse area you're talking about, where it comes down to the scupper area, that void. That void is where you could end up getting a lot of trash and gunk built up into there. And maybe you could ask them to revisit that area and take another look at it. Might be worth looking at. Other than that, I don't see anything to complain about. Happy roofing.